Mercedes has revealed that George Russell was forced to retire from the British Grand Prix to avoid a possible future grid penalty. Mercedes Director of Track Engineering, Andrew Shovlin, explained that Russell had to abandon the race on lap 34 due to a water system failure while fighting for a podium finish after starting the race from pole position in changing conditions. Russell reported a problem with his W15 laps before being instructed to retire. Initially, Mercedes was unaware that the problem was terminal. Unfortunately, we knew we had a problem relatively early in the race, so we were monitoring it from the first stint, Shovlin said. We didn't know it was going to be terminal, but it's all related to a leak in the water system that was causing the pressure to start dropping, and ultimately when we stopped the car, it was to protect the power unit. Shovlin added that the decision to retire the car was made to avoid damaging the power unit and to avoid a potential penalty later in the year. What you don't want to do is finish the race and destroy the power unit, then you'd be looking at a penalty possibly later in the year. So it was preemptive, but there was no way we were going to make it to the checkered flag. At the time of his retirement, Russell was in fourth position, part of a fight for victory with Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. The British driver was very strong in the early stages when the circuit was completely dry, but struggled when it started to rain. However, given that the latter stages of the race were in dry conditions on slick tires, it can be assumed that Russell would have finished the race strongly. Shovlin could not predict exactly where Russell would have finished had he not retired, given the changing nature of the conditions, but he suspects fourth would have been the minimum. With a race like that, with the changing conditions, it's pretty hard to say where we would have finished, Shovlin commented. If it had been a dry race from start to finish, seeing how George got off the line, how he was able to build a lead, I think he would have had a pretty easy afternoon. But if you take the point where we actually decided to retire the car, we were on intermediates, George was in P4, he was closing the gap on Max, so that looked good. To get the podium, Russell probably would have had to overtake Max on track at that point. And to put him on the podium, he probably would have had to overtake Max at that point, because we called the right stop with Lewis when we switched to dry tires. So I think it might have been a little bit too wet before. So, like I said, minimum of P4, but there would have been a chance if I could have passed Max on track on intermediates.